country on a under-16 social media ban. Indeed, when I've spoken to young people myself, that is one of the things that has come out. And there wasn't a strong feeling in my old school, De Ferrers Academy, about this either. Can she say what engagement she is going to undertake with young people so that decisions about their lives are directly fed into this consultation?
So state.
I mean, not for the first time. My honourable friend is spot on. I spoke to young people in my own constituency at Fulhurst School, and they had very different views about this proposal. We really want to hear directly from young people themselves. We've already had over 1,700 responses, especially from children. We're partnering with UK Youth and Volunteering Matters to run a series of 7 youth-led events across England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And we're also going to pilot some of the other potential interventions like overnight curfews and daily screen time limits, working with children and parents to see what works in practice and its impact on family life.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I hope this is a helpful suggestion to the Minister. There have been some objections to a social media ban for young people based on the fact that this would create a cliff edge whereby they had no involvement with it and then total involvement with it. But does she agree with me that one way of minimising that danger is that children should be encouraged to use the internet, which is not interactive, but will gradually acclimatise them for the day when they then are able to use interactive services more safely?
So state.
The right honourable gentleman is always helpful in well, not always, but on this occasion, he's been very helpful. That cliff edge argument has been made to me personally by the NSPCC, the Molly Rose Foundation, the Internet Watch Foundation and others, and I think it's one we should take seriously. I've spoken to schools in my own constituency about how best to handle that if we were to go ahead with the ban. I think it's a really important point about the education and awareness young people have, because life is online now and we have to prepare children for the future. That is really at the heart of the issues we're debating in this consultation.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I recently visited Litchett Minster School and QE School, and I held a session of asking the young people what their view was. And overwhelmingly, those children in sixth form supported a ban. Those children in the younger part of the school did not. How is the government going to tailor the questions for younger children and older children so that we get a really true understanding of the problem?
You'll have been all over it.
Well, I would love it if the honourable lady would send me a report or notes from that, because alongside the consultation that is specifically designed for children and young people, many of us in this House are talking to schools, and I would say to everybody, do send those views in, and I promise I will read them all.
Adam Thompson.
Number 5, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
I am very proud that this Labour government has put the biggest investment into research and development of any government ever, with a record £38 billion for UKRI, including £14 billion for curiosity-led research. This week, we announced our ambitious plan to buy usable, large-scale quantum computers by the early 2030s, backed by £2 billion of funding, a world first, backing our world-leading quantum sector, because we're determined to do everything to back our brilliant British scientists, innovators and entrepreneurs.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for her answer, and despite the massive government increases in funding generally, in a recent meeting of the SIT Select Committee, we heard how the Science and Technology Facilities Council, STFC, is currently dealing with a significant reduction in funding, particularly in particle physics, astronomy and nuclear physics. While Michelle Doherty, the Executive Chair of STFC, placed the blame squarely on decisions made prior to her arrival and explained her efforts to sort out the mess, it's the scientific community, research professionals and UK science that's going to feel the brunt of this funding crunch. What's the Secretary of State doing then to ensure that UK science is not damaged by STFC's historical failings?
So I know that there are a lot of concerns raised by the physics community about this issue. I would say that actually the STFC's budget is flat over the spending review, but as the Executive Chair says, there have been overspends in their budget over the past 5 years or so, overspends that have had to be met from elsewhere in UKRI's budget, meaning other things haven't been funded as a result. So STFC and UKRI are looking at how to get the balance right between their different projects. They and our Minister for Science and Research will be engaging closely with the physics community over the coming months to make sure we get this right.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent George works for the Science and Technology Facilities Council. He has highlighted to me that UK research and innovation is developing a model which significantly reduces spending for all areas of science under the STFC's remit, including quantum science, particle, astro and theoretical physics. Given that the STFC have already warned staff of potential job losses and run a voluntary exit scheme last year, can the Minister reassure the research community, including my constituent from Chorley Wood, by confirming the STFC science facilities and national labs have the necessary funding and will continue commissioning excellent research in years to come?
Well, I would like to reassure his constituents in Chorley Wood, a place I know well, and right across the country, that this government has given actually the biggest ever funding settlement for science. And the STFC's budget is not being cut. It's slightly rising, but it's actually flat over the course of the SR because of the impact of inflation. I think within that context, it's right to ask STFC and UKRI together to get those budgets under control. Experts will be helping to make sure that we prioritise the most important research, and I would say we strongly back curiosity-led research, especially in physics. It's so important for the foundation of our economy and society, but we need to sort this problem out.
Shadow Minister Dr Ben Spence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Modern warfare is technological warfare, so UK research and innovation is critical for our defence. When she has spoken with the Secretary of State for Defence about the Defence Investment Plan, and I assume that she has, which sectors has she prioritised for investment in UK companies and R&Ds? Is it drones, space, cyber, chips? Could she spell out her vision of the role of UK tech in defence, if she has one?
Well, as the former head of MI6 has repeatedly said, the single biggest thing that we could do to strengthen our defence and our national security is to invest in research and development. And UKRI has had the biggest funding settlement from any government ever under this Labour government. Members opposite want to slash UKRI's budget by £6 billion. That would wipe out all our funding for AI, advanced manufacturing, life sciences and much more. We're backing our defence sector with 10% of their equipment budget going on backing UK businesses. The Tories would slash the funding on which they depend.
Victoria College Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Funding for UK research innovation will continue to be undermined if the government's own procurement strategy sees billions going to companies outside the UK like US Palantir, where British tech have the solutions. Although we welcome the announcement of AI investment funding, that pales in comparison to the ongoing procurement investment. So will the government back the Liberal Democrat amendments on a comprehensive digital sovereign strategy, backing British tech, research and innovation, which is really vital for our economy, but also our national security?
I am very proud of this government's plan to back UK AI companies and our sovereign capabilities. £500 million in our new sovereign AI unit. £1 billion of free compute for British researchers and scientists, and overhauling government procurement so that we back innovative tech companies in the UK, big and small. That is the way forward to seize the opportunities for growth, but also secure our sovereign capabilities.
Come to topicals, Kirith Embassy.
Number one, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No woman or child should live in fear of having their image sexually manipulated by technology. That is why, in the last 6 months, we've made intimate image abuse and cyber flashing priority offences under the OSA. We've criminalised the creation of non-consensual sexual deepfakes and mandating those images are taken down within 48 hours. We've introduced an offence banning AI nudification apps, and we stood up to Grok and X. But we know technology moves fast, and as a government, we have to keep up. So where we need to go further, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst I am proud of the steps our government has taken to advance online safety, we are merely playing catch-up. What more is the government doing to ensure we keep pace with the reality facing women and girls, and how will it address emerging technologies like AI smart glasses, which are operating without scrutiny?
I thank my honourable friend for this question. One of my reflections in this job is that it took 8 years for the Online Safety Act to come in, and it's still yet to be fully implemented. We need to move faster. MPs discuss a finance bill every year. Technology moves incredibly fast, so I am always prepared to take further action where I need to.
Shadow Minister Peter Fortune.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm asking this question on behalf of my honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State, who can't be here today, but she wants the House to know how important this issue is to her. Mr. Speaker, the Lobular Moonshot project is a plan to fund critical research into lobular breast cancer. It's a disease often missed by screening and with no targeted treatment. 463 members of this House, including the Leader of the Opposition, support this plan. The Health Secretary says there's no political disagreement on this, and yet nothing has materially happened. His department now says it's for DCIT and the UKRI to comment on budget allocations and spending research priorities. So I ask the Secretary of State, is the Moonshot project a research priority for her, as it is for 463 of her parliamentary colleagues?
Secretary of State.
Anything that deeply affects the lives of thousands of people is a priority for me. I am more than happy to work with the honourable gentleman and others to try and reach a resolution here. My understanding is we've got to get the quality of bids right, but I would, of course, be happy to meet to discuss this further.
Peter Fortune.
I would like to thank the Secretary of State for that response. She should know that on the 22nd of April, vigils will be held across Westminster for the 22 women diagnosed with this insidious disease every day. So I thank the Secretary of State for that commitment to work with the Health Secretary between now and then so that we can highlight this issue. Will she agree to come back to the House and update us on the comments and discussions that she's had with the Secretary of State for Health?
So State.
Yes, because I always believe in action, not just words.
Lord McKee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Britain has a world-leading creative sector and an AI economy second only to the US and China. So can the Secretary of State tell me how she's promoting and protecting both industries?
So State.
This government is determined to protect the UK's position as a world-leading creative powerhouse and unlock the extraordinary potential of AI to grow the economy, improve British lives. Today, we've published a report and impact assessment fulfilling the commitments made in the Data Act. We've listened to the views about our initial consultation and confirmed that the government no longer has a preferred option. We've also set out where we will do more work with our creative and AI sectors, including on digital replicas, labelling, AI-generated content, creator control and transparency, and support for our brilliant small and independent creatives. Every country is grappling with this issue, and we are determined to get this right. So both these vital sectors can continue to flourish and thrive and lead the world.
Sir Edward Lee, found the House.
Will the Secretary of State commend the new nuclear fusion site at West Burton, just 2 miles from the town of Gainsborough, which potentially will unleash unlimited green energy, meanwhile hundreds of millions of pounds of investment and thousands of jobs? Will she confirm that when it comes to science and innovation, this country is not broken, it leads the world?
Minister.
Well, can I, Mr. Speaker,
affirm the importance of the project that the honourable gentleman is talking about. In particular, this government is backing the future of nuclear fusion right across the country. I know the site in particular has a huge contribution to make. Construction will be on its way by the end of the decade as well, and R&D tests before it. But at the heart of it, Mr. Speaker, we will be backing the use of AI to further our clean energy goals in fusion and beyond it as well.
Graham Downey.
Mr. Speaker, I met with pupils from Pittingcreef Primary School, Dollar Academy and Queen Anne High School in my constituency to talk about how to keep them safe online. They were very much in favour of some restrictions to make sure they were safe with social media, but very, very cautious of age-based bans. Can I ask the Secretary of State to make sure that the consultation coming forward is very reflective of what young people say and that it fits their daily lives?
Secretary of State.
Yes, we've already had more than 25,000 responses to our consultation, including 1,700 from children and young people themselves. But if he and any other honourable member in this House wants to send the views of their constituents, including young people, I will personally read them myself.
We now come to Prime Minister's questions. Wendy Moore.
Please, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our deepest condolences are with the families and friends of the 2 young people who've died following the outbreak of meningitis B in Kent. Others are seriously ill, and this will be a deeply difficult time for their loved ones. Mr. Speaker, health experts are working to identify close contacts and distribute antibiotics, and will begin a targeted vaccination programme in the coming days. And can I take this opportunity to ask anyone who attended Club Chemistry on March 5th, 6th or 7th to come forward, please, to receive antibiotics. And Mr. Speaker, yesterday President Zelensky addressed parliamentarians. Many people were there, and I had the opportunity to reaffirm to him that no matter other international events, the UK support for Ukraine will not waver. I also welcome Prime Minister Carney and NATO Secretary-General Rutte to Downing Street for further discussions on international security. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with Menstrual colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I first of all associate myself with the comments and the condolences made by the Prime Minister regarding those people affected by the meningitis outbreak. New data today shows that nearly 60% of hospices are considering cutting frontline services. In the West Midlands, St Giles Hospice has already reduced beds and reduced staff due to financial pressures. So with services being cut, can the Prime Minister explain why hospices are being told to wait until autumn for the new framework, and will he commit today to proper long-term sustainable funding to secure this vital lifeline for the future?
Prime Minister.
It is important that the funding and the framework is put in place, and we support the work of hospices and doing everything we can to support them.
Dr. Maria Timble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Caroline from Grenoside told me that since December the cost of her heating oil has nearly tripled from £257 to £700. Local farmers I met last week also raised their concerns that the oil industry has not been properly regulated, disadvantaging off-grid customers. Whilst I welcome the government's £53 million support package that was announced for rural communities, will the Prime Minister confirm how disabled people, vulnerable and low-income households can access this support, and how he will improve regulation of oil to bring down the cost of energy bills?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank her? My first instinct is always to protect people from the cost of living. The immediate action we've taken in relation to those that heat their homes with oil is the £53 million that we announced this week. That's particularly important for rural communities and, of course, Northern Ireland. But de-escalation in the Middle East is the quickest way to reduce the cost of living. And anyone who advocated for the UK to rush headlong into the offensive without a clear picture of what it meant for our forces, or without thinking through the economic impact for families, should stand up and apologise.
Leader of the Opposition. Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister tried to avoid scrutiny on the Mandelson files by releasing the documents immediately after Prime Minister's questions last week. So let me ask him now. Did the Prime Minister personally speak to Peter Mandelson about his relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein before appointing him as our ambassador to Washington?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must. This was my mistake in making the appointment, and I've apologised to the victims of Epstein. I do so again. The government is complying with the humble address in full, but we are also continuing to support the police in their investigation. The matter of process was looked at by the independent advisor on ministerial standards. It's clear the appointment process wasn't strong enough, and that's why I've already strengthened it. But it was my mistake, Mr. Speaker, and I've apologised for it. She should follow suit and apologise for a gross error of judgment in calling for the UK to join the war in Iran without thinking through the consequences.
Mr. Speaker, I know he doesn't want to talk about the documents he tried to bury last week. He's going to try and talk about anything else, but he's not going to get away with it. I asked him a question he did not answer. We know the Prime Minister was warned about the risk of appointing Peter Mandelson. This is not about the process. He knew that Mandelson stayed in Epstein's house after Epstein had been convicted for child prostitution. He knew that, so I will ask him again. Did he speak to Peter Mandelson about this before the appointment, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've already made clear that he was asked questions and gave untruthful replies. The government is complying with the humble address. The process has been set out. The independent advisor has looked at it, and he said, quote, the relevant process for a political appointee was followed. Now, obviously, this is a question of my judgment, but what about her judgment? She wanted to rush into a war with Iran without thinking it through. At the weekend, Mr. Speaker, three weeks in, she said, oh, there isn't a clear plan behind the US strikes in Iran. That's the question she should have asked at the start. The decision to commit the UK to a war is the biggest decision a Prime Minister can take, and she got it completely wrong.
I didn't hear an answer, Mr. Speaker, and he's right, it is about his judgment. He has repeatedly told us that Peter Mandelson lied to him, but he won't tell us if he actually picked up the phone and spoke to Mandelson before appointing him. This doesn't make any sense. The Prime Minister told us on the record, and I quote, I believed the lies he told me. If the Prime Minister didn't speak to him, how can he say he lied to him?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the process is clear. It's been looked at by the independent advisor. And she asked me about the process and judgment on appointments. She appointed the Shadow Justice Secretary. He said last night that Muslims praying in public, including the Mayor of London, practising his faith, are not welcome. He described it as an act of domination, straight from the Islamist playbook. If we're in my team, he'd be gone. It's utterly appalling. She should denounce his comments and she should sack him.
He wants to talk about Justice Secretaries. His Justice Secretary is abolishing jury trials. My Shadow Justice Secretary is defending British values. I know who I would rather have sitting on the front bench next to me, and it's not him.
Prime Minister.
But Mr. Speaker, this is important. He does want to talk about anything else except what I'm asking him. 3 times I have asked him if the Prime Minister spoke to Peter Mandelson. 3 times he has refused to answer. We can only assume he did not speak to Peter Mandelson. From the documents published, we know he left the questioning of Mandelson's relationship with a convicted paedophile to 2 of Mandelson's closest friends, one of whom was also friends with a convicted paedophile. Asking those questions should have been his job. Why did he fail to do his duty?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, so her position is that the Shadow Justice Secretary is defending British values when he says Muslims praying together in Trafalgar Square are not welcome. Mr. Speaker, even Tommy Robinson, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, has said today that if the Shadow Justice Secretary had made these hateful comments 2 years ago, the Conservative Party would have kicked him out. Now, Tommy Robinson isn't some sort of moral signpost. He was pointing out how much their party has changed. They're more inclined to his views, and he's right about that. The fact that he's sitting on her front bench shows she's too weak and has got absolutely no judgment.
The Prime Minister wants to talk about my leadership. I'm shocked because his former deputy has just fired the starting gun on the race to replace him. And I'll tell him one thing. She and I both agree that this weak man should be replaced by a strong woman. But I'm not finished, Mr. Speaker. I have too much to say to him. There is still a lot to ask. There is still a lot to ask about the Mandelson files. There's still a lot to ask. The Prime Minister knew that Mandelson had kept up a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The documents released also show he'd been warned about appointing Mandelson. He claims he was lied to. Mandelson had twice been fired for dishonesty. So why did the Prime Minister believe Peter Mandelson over the vetting documents?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she asked about leadership. When I see religious events in Trafalgar Square, when I see Hindus celebrating Diwali, when I see Jews celebrating Hanukkah live, when I see Christians performing the Passion of Christ, or Muslims praying, that shows the great strength of our diverse city and country. I've never heard her party call out anything other than the Muslim events. It's only when Muslims are praying. The only conclusion is the Tory party has got a problem with Muslims.
Can I just say, people say, I am not responsible for the answers. I've just got to say that. Come here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a shame he's not responsible for the answers either. The Prime Minister wants us to believe that he is a serious leader, but he doesn't do the work. He outsources the decisions, and when things go wrong, he blames the vetting, he blames the Chief of Staff, he blames the Cabinet Secretary, he blames anyone but himself. This Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson, but didn't bother to ask the questions. If he cannot be straight with the House on something as simple as this, why should we believe a word he says about anything?
She talks about doesn't do it. 3 weeks ago, she said we should rush into war. She didn't do the work. She didn't think through the consequences. Committing our military to a war without thinking through the consequences is the gravest mistake a leader of the opposition can ever. And she comes back a week later and says, oops, I got that one wrong. She's utterly irrelevant, and she's got no judgment. This is the leader of the opposition who said I should have empty-chaired the most important NATO summit in years. This is the leader of the opposition who said Greenland is a second-order issue. And this is the leader of the opposition who jumped into a war with Iran without stopping to think. On top of that this week, the failure to condemn and sack...
Order. And I will repeat again, I'm not responsible for the answers, but it's certainly not opposition questions.
Mr. Speaker, add to that the failure to condemn and sack the Shadow Justice Secretary for the poison and division that he spreads. It's turning out to be quite a month for the leader of the opposition, who claims she never makes any mistakes.
Mr. Speaker.
Sorry, please. Claire Hanna.
We've seen this play out before, a US rush to military escalation with no plan for what comes next. We've seen schoolgirls bombed in Iran, whole families killed in Lebanon, chaos in a region already scarred by repression and genocide and economic shocks that hurt the most vulnerable at home. In Irish, there's a phrase, Nialter and Sianach we go, have we learned no lessons? People are asking exactly that. How many times do these horrors
play out before the lessons are learned. The Prime Minister has said that the US will not be drawn into a wider war. Will he guarantee two things: that that position will hold in the face of mounting pressure from Trump and Netanyahu, and can he guarantee that this House would get a vote before the UK involves in any further conflict?
Prime Minister.
Unlike the Leader of the Opposition, my principles have been clear and unwavering. We will protect our people in the region. We will take action to defend ourselves and our allies, and we will not be drawn into the wider war. I want to see this war end as quickly as possible. Mr. Speaker, the longer it continues, the bigger the impact on the cost of living. And that's where we've intervened to support households with costs of heating oil. The best way forward is a negotiated settlement with Iran giving up any aspirations to develop a nuclear weapon.
Sir Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I join the Prime Minister in offering my condolences to the family and friends of the two young people who've been killed by the meningitis bug in Kent, and all those affected by this horrifying outbreak. Mr. Speaker, Britain's independent nuclear deterrent is critical for the defence of our nation and for the whole of Europe. But the current Trident missiles will reach the end of their lives in the 2040s, so we have to make a choice now. Lease new missiles to the United States, accepting whatever terms the President gives us, or build our own here in the United Kingdom. And the Conservatives and Reform say we have to rely on President Trump and the United States because we couldn't possibly do it ourselves. Does the Prime Minister agree with them?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our independent nuclear deterrent protects us every day, and we should never forget how important it is. And it is important that we renew it. We will do that in the best interests of Britain. I mean, he's openly advocating a plan which he doesn't know how much it would cost and how it would work. That isn't the way to deal with our independent nuclear deterrent.
Sir Ed Davey.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised at that response. The French can do it. Does the Prime Minister really think Britain can't? But moving on, Mr. Speaker, a New World investigation into GB News has found hundreds of shocking breaches of the rules of impartiality and accuracy. Yet Ofcom has repeatedly refused to take action. Andrew Neil says, just as Fox basically became the channel of Donald Trump, it is clear they have turned GB News into the Reform channel. Mr. Speaker, we cannot let GB News propaganda turn our great country into their version of Trump's America. Either the government rules aren't fit for purpose, or Ofcom isn't properly enforcing them. Prime Minister, which is it?
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right to raise an important question of free speech and our media. It is a matter for Ofcom, and it's important that we let them deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Violence against women and girls is a global emergency. It's a key concern that we discussed at last week's United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Social media platforms are promoting and profiting off vile online misogyny. It's made its way onto playgrounds, workplaces, relationships, and even our politics, harming women and girls and exploiting young men and boys. In the manosphere, everyone loses. Can I ask the Prime
has been made. Now, I know that the Prime Minister and the government this issue poses to public confidence in mass vaccination marks in this session, and indeed the pain it's caused to ones only doing what their government asked them to do. So with this issue and ensure that his government makes swift progress.
Can I thank him for raising it, acknowledge in relation to this, and actually pay tribute to him and to Kate. We look closely at the rare and tragic cases that will maintain confidence in our health service. Points out today as well. We are committed to those affected to make sure it meets their needs. This month, which will look specific. To reassure him, we'll look at other recommendations very.
National conference last week, it is clear dragging in young people as young as 40 in latest tech to combat this crime, and it's to invoke a kill switch so that mobile phones take more seriously than Apple. Will do this, that the government will
made hundreds of arrests. With her, there's more value. To those drive down on this.
Funding for UK and procurement will use digital systems in health. Politically motivated US
Minister, can I thank of innovation launch a sovereign AI opportunity reference to roll out we're determined to deliver that.
Done 300. Takes us back to the day. With Huddersfield, you have to tell me how the
Stronger community health services, like the local innovation centre that he mentions, are at the heart of our 10-year plan to go further. But we would not have come this far already, Mr Speaker, without the decisions made at the budget, which were opposed by all of the parties opposite.
Sir David Davis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week, in the government's attack on jury trials, his own backbenchers said the following: unworkable, unjust, unpopular, unnecessary, wrong in principle, wrong in practice, oppressive, authoritarian, and quite honestly, reactionary. 3,000 of his own lawyers, his own fellow lawyers, said juries have not caused this crisis. And the Prime Minister himself, earlier in his career, said scrapping juries enables wrongful convictions. Now the Institute for Government is saying that they are massively overestimating the savings they're going to make on this. So let's be clear. His backbenchers oppose it, his professional colleagues oppose it, and in a previous life, he opposed it. So why is the Prime Minister forcing through a policy that's unjust in principle, unworkable in practice, and opposed by everyone?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're not abolishing jury trial, and he knows that. I've worked with women and girls who've been victims of sexual violence and rape, who have waited a very, very long time for their cases to come to court. Many of them drop out because of the wait. They have described to me personally the mental anguish that they go through when their case can't get heard for years, when they're told of adjournments time and time again. I'm not prepared to look them in the eye any longer and not do something about it. We owe it to them. This is about getting the balance right. We're not abolishing jury trial. There's about 3% of cases go to jury trial, as he very well knows. 97% don't. After this, it'll be 2.25%. That is the difference between the policy we're advancing and the policy as it now is. So it's not abolishing jury trials, but I'm not prepared to see those who've been victims of violence against women and girls, I'm not prepared to see them repeatedly let down. That's what happened for 14 long years. It's not good enough, and I set my face about doing something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spent 20 years as a secondary school teacher in Wales. We worked hard. Labour has given them the biggest upgrade of rights in a generation. Rights that millions of us fought hard to win. But the honourable member for Clacton wants to chuck it all in the bin. Does the Prime Minister stand by these rights and agree that only a vote for Labour in May will enshrine these fundamental workers' rights?
Mr. Speaker, I am very proud of our Employment Rights Act. It delivers strong rights and protections, including for all our brilliant school staff. And reform, he's right, would rip up those protections. They have nothing to offer but grievance and division. And, Mr. Speaker, they have no judgment, because just like the Leader of the Opposition, the member for Clacton said we should do all we can to support the US strikes, and he said, I make that perfectly clear. It was perfectly clear. He got it completely wrong, and perfectly clear that he's now desperately trying to U-turn. Absolutely no judgment, not fit to be Prime Minister.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the course of the last year, our North Sea neighbours, Norway, have opened 49 drill sites for gas and oil. On our side of the North Sea, the number is 0. Given that our critical reserve of natural gas is down to 2 days and how vulnerable we are, and with talk potentially of energy rationing coming later this year, isn't it time we change course, got rid of excessive taxation on the exploration companies, opened up the licences, became self-sufficient in natural gas, and with that would come thousands of jobs, increased tax revenues and cheaper gas prices. Isn't it time we followed Norway?
Mr. Speaker, oil and gas will be part of the mix of our energy for many, many years to come, as I've set out many, many times. But he's now highlighting the consequences of the war that he said we should rush into. He wanted us to go to war. He said it was perfectly clear that we should support the strikes. Then, just like the Leader of the Opposition, a week later, he said, oh, no, I got that one wrong. You can't make mistakes about decisions as serious as committing to war. It's a gross error.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 95% of the food that we import from non-EU countries has lower welfare standards than that of British farmers, costing us millions and putting worse food on our plates. So that's why the Labour Rural Research Group will be shortly launching our spring push on farming profitability to support British farmers by introducing honest labelling and levelling the playing field for trade and regulation. So will the Prime Minister commit to meeting with me and the LRRG to discuss how we can work to back British farmers and improve their profitability?
I'm very happy to discuss that with my honourable friend. We will always protect high welfare standards, and through our food and drink deal, bringing down barriers for farmers selling to our largest market. Mr. Speaker, alongside a record £11.8 billion farming budget and investing in cutting-edge innovation, our farming profitability review is focused on boosting profitability. And I've already acted and set up the Farming and Food Partnership Board, investing £30 million in our Farmer Collaboration Fund.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Traffic chaos from a botched road realignment affecting Calvert Green, Steeple, Claydon and Twyford. Landowners still awaiting payment for land taken. Woeful underfunding of promised mitigation projects in Wendover in inadequate noise modelling. Now, the Prime Minister and I used to, many years ago, be united in our opposition to HS2. Yeah. He changed. But with the upcoming HS2 reset, will he make a personal intervention to ensure that my constituents and communities living with this hell on earth of a construction project are finally treated with the fairness and respect that they deserve?
Yeah. Prime Minister. Can I thank him for raising this? I do know how much it impacts his constituents and how deeply they feel about it. And it is important, as we reset and clear up the mess that was left, that we bear in mind and have in our mind's eye those that are most affected and make sure that it is fair and that their voices are heard, and we will do so.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Burnley-Manchester Road Station is a key driver for growth. It's Burnley's link to Manchester and Leeds, and more importantly for them, it's their link to Burnley. Which had over 500,000 journeys last year, and yet it's inaccessible, despite big, empty promises from the last Tory government. We're no further to fixing it. A promise of funding was made, which never came. Will he help me get this delivered and back my campaign to make Burnley-Manchester Road an accessible, modern station fit for Burnley's ambition?
He's a great champion on this issue, and I'll make sure he gets a meeting with the Rail Minister to discuss the detail. The previous government took the decision not to shortlist Burnley-Manchester Road Station for accessibility improvements. We're giving Lancashire Combined County Authority £641 million with the freedom to invest in their priorities, including better accessibility. That's what a Labour government represents, empowering local people to make the best decisions for their local area.
Andrew Snowden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Every week the Prime Minister comes here and reads out this pre-scripted nonsense that bears no resemblance to the questions he's actually asked. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Peter Mandelson and he answered about the war in Iran. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Mandelson again and he answered with an attack on the Shadow Justice Secretary. He was asked about Mandelson again and talked about protests in London. What is he scared of? What is he hiding? For a man who has spent years presenting himself as a forensic investigator, he has certainly had a blind spot to the details for this convicted paedophile with a friend in high Labour places. So I shall ask him again, when he found out that Lord Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, did he speak to him personally before appointing him ambassador to the United States?
Mr. Speaker, we've set out the process. It is being put before the House. But I know why they don't want to. They don't want to talk about the war because they supported going into the war without thinking through the consequences. That is a huge error of judgment. I realise they don't want to talk about it ever again. I'm not surprised. Nor do they want to talk about the Shadow Justice Secretary saying that Muslims are not welcome to prayer in Trafalgar Square. She should remove him from their front bench, or I suspect he'll be up there next on that trail.
Matt Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister mentioned earlier, the CEO of Travelodge has today again refused to attend a meeting with wider members of this House and the other place to answer serious concerns about guest safety and safeguarding. This refusal only deepens the lack of trust in the company's commitment to protecting women and vulnerable guests. Will the Prime Minister meet with me and invite the CEO of Travelodge to discuss the issue? And will he join me in urging the CEO to explain directly to all parliamentarians why she is unwilling to face scrutiny on such an important matter?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank him for raising this, and he's raised this with me personally. Our thoughts are obviously with the victims. I was very concerned to hear that the CEO of Travelodge cancelled the meeting with MPs, and I would urge them to reconsider. That meeting needs to go ahead with relevant MPs and with the relevant minister, and the sooner it goes ahead, the better. And I hope that the CEO of Travelodge is listening to this exchange, and I thank him for raising it, not just on this occasion, but on repeated occasions.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. Point of order, Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You have clearly explained that you are not responsible for the quality or lack of it in a minister's answers or even a prime minister's answers. But can you explain for the benefit of the House and the viewing public what Prime Minister's questions is supposed to be about? Namely, that the opposition and other honourable and right honourable members get to ask the Prime Minister a question about a subject of their choice. It is not a matter for him then to berate them for not asking a question about a completely different subject that he wishes had been asked.
Can I just say, a long-standing member that came in with me in 1997 knows that that is not a point of order. Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to that point of order, notwithstanding the rulings that you have made in the chair, which I think are always perfect and completely right, can I ask, Mr. Speaker, we are now entering a new period where a Prime Minister answers a question about a subject that wasn't asked and then focuses asking a question on the opposition front bench. So, notwithstanding the ruling that you've just made to my right honourable friend, can you give me the options as to the parliamentary mechanisms and who I can approach to see whether there needs to be reform in the standing orders to actually give you the power to be able to determine what is an answer to a question and what is a completely pathetic...
Can I just say, there is a real weakness in that, because there is an assumption that the person knows the answer. I will leave it at that. Don Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're also not responsible, Mr. Speaker, for the questions asked. The leader of the opposition said that it was British values to attack Muslims praying. I just wondered, Mr. Speaker, if that brings this House into disrepute in regards to British values.
Can I just say, Luke, it's an important point that we need tolerance. And what I would say is about respecting each other. And what I would say is, you put your point on the record, but I'm not going to enter into a debate, and I will leave it at that for the moment. Point of order, Sir John Hayes.
Further to the point made by my honourable friend, and notwithstanding your ruling, Mr. Speaker, Erskine May makes it clear, does it not? Questions. And whilst the standing orders may need refining, they already make clear that that is the purpose of the sessions we have daily, and indeed in the case of the Prime Minister weekly. Is it not, Mr. Speaker?
Sir John, can I just say, you're just continuing a debate that I think I've already given the answers to. I think we'll leave it at that. Right, thank you. We now come to the 10-minute rule bill. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision about the teaching of menstrual and gynaecological health in certain educational settings, to provide training, guidance and resources to support such teaching. To provide that training includes content about awareness of racial discrimination in menstrual and gynaecological health. To require the Secretary of State to take steps to increase public understanding of menstrual and gynaecological health, including measures to counter inaccurate or misleading information online relating to menstrual and gynaecological health and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, in this bill, I'm addressing one aspect of women's health, menstrual health. Menstrual health is surrounded by misinformation, fear and failure to support millions of women and girls. For women who menstruate, the experience of asking for advice or even medical treatment is routinely dismal. Ask any woman from school days onwards, it's a nightmare of stigma, shame and a failure of the NHS to help. The recent Women and Equality Select Committee report states, and I quote, "Stigma around menstruation, sex, fertility and childlessness is a barrier to discussion of reproductive ill health. It contributes to delays in diagnosis and treatment and can lead women and girls to turn to online forums to self-diagnose or to avoid seeking treatment altogether. And of course, that self-diagnosis can be misguided and dangerous, fed by dubious online fake cures and claims. The internet is not a safe place for clear expert advice for girls and women wanting to know about their periods and menstrual health. A poll commissioned by the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists found that over half, 53% of women in the UK who had experienced symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction did not seek help from a healthcare professional. 1 in 5, that is 21%, felt too embarrassed to seek support. In 2018, a YouGov poll found that period shaming happens at home, in the workplace and at school in the UK. The Royal College further noted that there is immense society pressure on women and girls to conceal their periods due to beliefs that menstruation is unhygienic or unclean, and talking openly about periods is often not considered a social norm. We live in a modern day society with an openness to address all manner of health issues, including mental health. Yet talking about menstrual health remains a stigma, shrouded in shame and embarrassment, and frankly, medieval attitudes held by many. In the call for evidence, the Women's Health Strategy had 29% of respondents who said they did not feel comfortable talking to healthcare professionals about gynecological conditions. For teenage girls aged 16 and 17, this rose to 40%. So these shocking figures show that this stigma has real-world consequences on women's health. Women and girls get the wrong advice or dangerous advice or no advice. Their shame means that their conditions and diseases are not diagnosed. Sadly, conditions such as endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, polycystic ovary syndrome, pelvic inflammatory disease, pelvic organ prolapse, ovarian cysts, and others are far too often missed, leaving many women to endure years of unnecessary pain. The time for diagnosis for endometriosis has actually gone up, not down, with women waiting on average 9 years and 4 months. And for women of colour and women from other ethnic minority backgrounds, the average wait is 11 years. Why, you might wonder, are women of colour waiting longer? Well, I'm afraid to say we suffer discrimination within the health system. Our pain is dismissed, our concerns are ignored. There is well-documented bias embedded in the NHS when it comes to black women's health, leading to poorer outcomes and terrible experience for so many women. And we must also address, too, the cultural assumptions within some communities which tell girls that periods are a punishment or dirty or something to be ashamed of or something to be kept as a secret. A dangerous cocktail of misogyny, misinformation and myth leading to girls and women who are misinformed, mistreated and misdiagnosed. So my bill aims to tackle that stigma and get society talking about periods and menstrual health. Let's smash the stigma, starting in schools with teachers well equipped to support their pupils. No schoolgirls should suffer in silence. Let's use the rollout of more diagnostic hubs and the shift to more community-based preventative care to raise awareness about menstrual health. More public awareness campaigns on the same scale as NHS sepsis campaign. And not just the public, but also medical professionals from the very start of their careers. Every doctor needs proper training on menstrual health to spot endometriosis, fibroids and other gynecological conditions early, to give proper advice to their patients, to debunk online myths and misinformation, to be aware of and tackle racial bias within the healthcare system. We need every employer to be aware of menstrual health. to have proper systems of support in the place for the workplace, to have period products available for free, to recognise that if a woman needs time off because of their blinding pain, they are not making it up. So I welcome the work of the TUC and the trade unions in this area. We also need to have more difficult conversations. We need more men squirming in their seats as we discuss our periods, our bleeding, our pain. And we need to stop talking in euphemisms, all those little silly terms about periods, disguising the reality and stopping an open conversation. We need more women's voices to be heard. And not just that, but women to be actively leading the design and delivery of the healthcare system. The NHS must no longer be male by default. And I speak to so many women and girls who have been let down, whose mental and physical health have been damaged. This must stop. The upcoming Women's Health Strategy must be more than a document, but a manifesto for revolutionary change. Or else, what is the point of it? No more girls crying in changing rooms, no more workers hiding in toilets, no more shame. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Marsha Jakova, Ollie Glover, Paulette Hamilton, Carolyn Harris, Christine Jardine, Tulip Sadiq, Valerie Vaz, Jill Furness, Kirsten Sullivan, Simon Hoare, Sir Alex Shelbrooke, and myself, Mr. Speaker.
Abena Pongasari.
Menstrual and Gynecological Health Bill.
Second reading what day?
17th of April.
The 17th of April. Well done, Abena. Perfect. We now come to the opposition day motion on the fuel duty. I inform the House that I have selected the amendment in the name of the Prime Minister. I call the opposition spokesman to move the motion. Show Secretary of State, Mr Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, once again this House has come together to hear of yet another egregious tax on transport, pushed out by this Labour government at a time when people across the country are worried about the cost of getting around. On this occasion, the government, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that this is the moment, the opportune time to cancel the fuel duty freeze the last Conservative government kept for 13 years, protecting hard-working people from paying extra to get to work, to have appointments, to visit friends and families. Conservatives cut this by 5 pence a litre in 2022, the biggest cut ever in fuel duty. 5 pence a litre. And that really helped when the economy was facing headwinds from Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Yet under this government, on top of the countless tax rises that they've already shafted us with, we can't even get through 2 years before they decide that the British people need yet another tax rise. And it's a tax rise in a sneaky and stealthy way. Labour are busy deploying their salami tactics. 1 penny in September, the back-to-school tax. 2p in December, the Christmas shopper tax. 2p in March, springtime for taxes. And we shouldn't forget that a 5p litre increase in duty actually means 6p a litre increase because in top of the tax, VAT is added too. In September last year, in this chamber, the Transport Secretary trumpeted, and I quote, that Labour had frozen fuel duty. That is what we have done. Yet we know this is simply not the case. It reminds me of my childhood watching Chris Tarrant on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire saying, but we don't want to give you that. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady has said not once, not twice, but three times, Mr. Speaker, that tax rises are now coming. And they're coming in September, December and in March next year. With economic growth at a dismal 0%, that's right, 0%, the British people deserve better than underhand taxes swindling them out of the pounds in their pockets. And to pay for what, Mr. Speaker? To pay for more welfare. A tax on every car, every van, every motorbike and every bus. This is a tax on hauliers too. A tax on businesses, a tax on families, a tax on the country over. It is these families, thanks to her government, who will be forking out an extra £156 a year. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
First of all, can I congratulate the Shadow Minister and the Opposition bringing this forward, and it's very important that we do consider this. We're fast approaching a crisis that cannot be circumnavigated. The Shadow Minister agreed that government must consider reopening North Sea production and to produce enough for our needs. If government continues to refuse to play their part to secure the fuel pass, and does the Shadow Minister not agree that fuel duty can and should see the benefit of self-reliance and not dependence on volatile nations, which it is at this very minute?
Quite right.
I cannot agree more with the honourable member. We need to get back to drilling in the North Sea. It's quite clear that when Norway is drilling on one side of the same basin and actually getting the benefit of those jobs, of the tax revenue, it bemuses me as to why we're not doing it here. And my right honourable friend, the member for Surrey East, has consistently said from these benches, as the Shadow Energy Secretary, that's exactly what we should get on and do. I give way on the same point.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend, and he makes a powerful point around North Sea oil and gas. And party opposite says it won't make any difference to the global price of oil and gas. But billions and billions of pounds in tax will be lost as a result of having no new licences in the oil sea. Those billions could be used to replace the revenues generated by fuel duty. So, in fact, if the government wished it, it could convert those billions into cuts in price at the pump for every single family in the country, including those in rural Beverley and Holderness who are suffering today.
My right honourable friend makes an incredibly important point. The government is currently foregoing tax revenue, which is going into the coffers of other treasuries right across Europe and across the world. It's forgoing that revenue. And why? To what end? We'll see if the ministers will actually answer that question as to why they're willing to forgo that. Hundreds of thousands of jobs, billions of pounds every year. They could spend it on anything they wanted to, and they're not even going to do it. And he says they're getting...
Order. PPFs are not there to chirp all the way through and give solutions to a problem. I have great confidence in the Minister to answer when he comes on.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, for reminding the Right Honourable Member of his role. Indeed, I will give way to my honourable friend.
Does he agree with me that the government's policy fails on its own terms because it says it wants to subscribe to net zero and make us much greener the way we approach our energy consumption, and yet we know that importing LNG from countries like the US causes a multiple in terms of the carbon cost than extracting the stuff in this country within our own territorial sea would do. And therefore, if they're serious about net zero, they will be pumping LNG from the North Sea and not importing it from the US.
The honourable member makes an incredibly important point, and I think he makes it really clearly as well. And he's in agreement with the Committee on Climate Change, who say we're going to have to be using oil and gas well into the second half of this century. So why on earth shouldn't we drill our own at lower cost and bring in those jobs and taxation, and also, obviously, with the environmental benefits of doing it on our own doorstep as well, and doing it under British regulations as well. So we're not this isn't going to be extracted in other countries with lower regulations, lower environmental standards. The best environmental standards in the world exist in our North Sea. And I'll happily give way to the honourable member.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Part of the debate is really around sustainability and it's around net zero, and obviously honourable colleagues have made a number of interventions already around that, and I understand the Shadow Minister's position. But does he agree with me that actually, whilst we're also focusing on the hiking fuel duty, the government are also increasing the charges on electric vehicle drivers? So it's both sets of drivers that are being hammered by this government who haven't thought through the consequences of their policy.
My honourable friend makes a very interesting point as well at this juncture. It's very clear that the government is also trying to undo the damage that it's done by its own new tax. And actually, it's having to put more money in terms of the electric car grant than it's going to get out from these pay-per-mile schemes, which actually the government previously had said it would not introduce. So the government is actually costing itself more money by imposing a tax. It's quite incredible what the government is up to, whether it comes to the North Sea or whether it comes to taxation policy. And that I will in a moment. The Taxpayers Alliance has said that almost £40,000 of fuel taxes will be paid by the average driver over the course of a lifetime after this tax hike. And it will be a higher proportion of that income if you're in a lower paid job and need a car to get about. And I'll give way on that point to my honourable friend.
I thank the honourable gentleman friend for giving way. Just to make a couple of points, however, and he's talking about how money may be spent from taxation. Just to highlight the point that local authority road maintenance budgets fell from £4 billion in 2006 to £2 billion in 2019, so halved in that 13-year period. And then just to look at inflation, where you see for the Bank of England's data,